Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about how to submit a Canadian Experience Class application. My name is Louise Willis. I'm the director here at Canadian Visa Specialists. And just to let you know, I am what's called a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, okay, which means that I am legally authorized to represent you to the Government of Canada for an immigration application. I am also licensed here in the province of Quebec. A little bit of background on myself. I'm also a member of the Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants. And actually, I've sat on the Quebec chapter of their board of directors in total for about 8 years or so over the last 10 or 11 years. I do also sit on the board of directors for a nonprofit organization that does help recently arrived refugees here in Montreal. And I've been working and helping people come to Canada for the last 20 years or so, okay, so since 2001. So why are we talking about submitting your Canadian Experience Class application? This is why, because of the huge unprecedented, unexpected draw that we had on the morning of Saturday, February 13th. Okay, so 27,332 people were invited to submit an application for permanent residency in the Canadian Experience Class. As mentioned, you know, I mean, I've been working with Express Entry applications since they came in, and we've never seen such a draw, so huge. And also, the points 75, like that's crazy. So what that means is basically immigration have invited almost everybody prior to who have created a profile prior to September 12th. Okay, so you did have to have your profile in the pool prior to September 12th, 2020. And as long as you had more than 75 points and you met the eligibility requirements under the Canadian Experience Class, you were given an invitation. Okay, so that means now that you have 90 days in which to file your full application. So obviously, Express Entry Profile was the first stage. Now you have to actually file a full permanent residency application, and the deadline is going to be May 15th, 2021. Now, this is an application that is uploaded, okay, through your profile. You and over 27,000 people, okay? Now, don't leave it till the last minute is my advice, okay? Immigration system does have a tendency to have some glitches, to get overloaded. You have problems signing in sometimes. So really knowing that you and another over 27,000 people are going to be submitting an application, all with the same deadline, really try not to leave it too late, okay? So do try and submit as soon as you can. Now, I just need to say a quick disclaimer, because obviously I'm going to be talking about filing an application and the types of documents you need to upload and some practical tips, okay, about what you need to do to file the application. Now, this is general information I'm giving, so it is not case by case. Everybody's application is different, and there may very well be specific details that apply to your case that do not apply to others. Okay, so this is what we're going to be talking about today, is applying for your permanent residency online. Obviously, the fact that you've given an invitation, you've received an invitation, means that you've gone through the first two steps. So we're now looking at the step here right at the end, applying for your permanent residence online. This is what we're going to be talking about today. So what next? Okay, you've received your invitation to apply. What are you going to do with regards to completing your information online, preparing all of your documents, uploading your documents, paying your fees? We'll talk briefly about processing times and also about the impact of COVID, okay? So first thing, what next? Now, when you receive your invitation to apply, one of the things that I do recommend you do right away is book your medical, okay? Because you and anybody else that's on your application, okay, so if you have spouse and dependent children on your application, you all need to do an immigration medical, and not just any doctor can do it. It must be a designated panel physician. So this is a practitioner that has been designated by Immigration Canada to perform medicals for immigration purposes. So they are all listed on Immigration Canada's website. Go to the list and make sure you book your appointment as soon as you can, because again, let's remember the number of people that have just received these invitations. There may be a backlog, okay? So get booked on those right away. If you need a new police check, then make sure you apply for that as soon as you can. You don't need one if you're currently in, you don't need one from Canada, okay? Immigration are not requiring those. They may request one later on, but for this application, you do not need to submit an RCMP check. You do, if you are outside of Canada, you do need to submit a police check that has been issued in the last 6 months, okay, for the country where you're currently residing. If you've lived in any countries in the last 10 years for more than 6 months, you are going to need to provide a police check for those countries, okay? So make sure you have those either to hand. If you have one that's been issued since you departed that country, then that will still be valid, okay? But very important that the check has to have been issued after you left that country. So make sure that you have those either submitted or you have those in hand ready to go. If any of your documents are not in English or French, then do make sure that you get the translations done. And these must be done by a certified translator, okay, who will stamp and sign the documents with their license number so you know that they are certified. And again, the list of certified translators are available on a provincial basis. Completing your information online. So it's important for you to know that your Express Entry profile was a snapshot of you, okay, which should allow Immigration Canada to determine your eligibility under the Canadian Experience class and also to determine the points that you will be allocated. So now you have to actually add in a lot more information. Okay, so we've gone from the snapshot to the detailed information, okay? And bear in mind that it's only once you've actually completed all of the information that you will actually get your personalized document checklist. It's not like the old days where, you know, there was one generic document checklist that was applicable to everybody. Now, because this is an automated system, it is only once you've actually completed all the information that you will get your own personalized document checklist. And I'm going to give you examples of that. Okay, obviously make sure you take your time when inputting all the information and that you have reference points for your information so you can always refer back to it. So what is the type of information you're going to need? Well, you're going to need to input your family information. So your parents, your siblings, you know, their name, date of birth, country of residence, country of birth, details of your education, details of your employment for the past 10 years or since age 18, okay, if you're less than 28 years old, and the same for your travel history and all of your addresses, okay? And then obviously you're also going to need to answer statutory questions about your history. So if you've had any previous refusals, if there's anything you're concerned about, you know, this is where you would list it, you know, with regards to if you've had any criminal convictions, etc. Okay. So this is what it's going to look like once you've entered your information. Okay, so what you're seeing here is basically a screenshot once somebody has completed all of their outstanding information, and you'll see that after each section you have that nice little green check mark saying that it is complete. Okay, so it is only once all of these sections have been completed that you're actually going to be able to hit the continue button and be able to proceed to your document checklist. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of or some of these sections. I'm not going to go into, you know, the personal details, contact details, you know, that's all pretty self-explanatory. But I am going to talk to you about your work history. And so in the work history section, make sure that you list all of the skilled employment for which you are claiming points. Okay, now you'll notice that your history that you put in your original profile will have carried over. And it's important for you to know that this section is for the skilled employment that you're claiming points under for your Canadian experience class, so your Canadian work experience, and also any foreign skilled work experience, okay? Any work history listed in this section is going to generate the requirement for documents to be provided to prove this work history. So make sure that's what you do have listed there. Make sure that your NOC code or your NOC code is correct, okay? You all will have inputted this in your original profile, but just go back and double check because obviously it's critical that the NOC code is the correct one for your application, okay? You do need to ensure that the dates of employment are correct. Here you just need to enter the beginning, month and year. Okay, so not the actual specific day, but the month and the year you started and ended each period of employment. Very important. Unfortunately, self-employed work in Canada does not count under this section. So this is where you would list, just to give you an example of how you'll be entering your information. So you'll see, you know, the beginning and end of the job, or you can check off that it's your current job, in which case there'll be no end date. Hours per week, because obviously we need to see that it's a full-time employment, okay? Or if it's less than 30 hours a week, it will be considered part-time, and then you'd have to look at the part-time equivalent, okay? So the 4-digit NOT code, very important. Job title, name of the employer, and then further down, it'll also be the location of the employer. So make sure that is all accurate. You then get into your study and languages. Now, again, when you need to make sure that all of the information regarding your education for which you're claiming points is listed here. Okay, and again, what you will have previously entered likely will have carried through, okay, if you entered your education for the Canadian Experience class, which you likely did, but there may be situations, because it's actually technically not a requirement under the Canadian Experience class, but most people do include it, because obviously to get as many points as possible. Now, you'll make sure that the ECA number for your foreign education is correctly listed, okay? And do make sure that it is the one that has been issued for immigration purposes. If the file number is not the correct one, this will mean that immigration are unable to verify the information, because they only have access to those that have been issued for immigration purposes, and you run a risk of your application being canceled, okay? So do make sure it's the right one. If you have any Canadian education, then of course make sure you list it here. If there's any other education that you need to list in the last 10 years, you can push that into the personal history section, okay? Because the personal history section will not require you to provide the necessary documents, but everything that you list under the education section will generate the requirement for documents. So just to give you an example, this is what it'll look like. So you will enter the field of study and when you started, the month and year you started and finished the education. It'll also, you'll notice, ask you whether or not it was full-time or part-time study. And also what happened when you finished the study. Okay, so was the degree granted or not? Okay, and then obviously name and location of the school or institution where you studied. Language test. So the language test, you will all have done either the CELPIP or the IELTS already, because that was an absolute requirement just for you to get into the pool, okay, when you created your Express Entry profile. So this will already be listed and it will have carried over. You do, however, need to make sure that the reference number and possibly the PIN are listed. So you'll need to add these at this stage of the application. Okay, you will notice, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but you will notice that when you get to your document checklist, immigration don't actually ask for a copy of your language test, okay? And the reason is because they do have agreements with the language organizations that will allow them to double check the information in their system to make sure that indeed the results that you've listed are accurate, and that's why you have to enter in your reference and PIN number, okay? However, I do suggest that you include a copy anyways, okay? So you can upload that with your cover letter, and I'm going to get into details about the cover letter later on, but I do suggest that you include a copy of that as well. So just to give you an idea, this is what the page will look like for your language assessment. And you'll see there's the request there for the language test result form or certificate number. Okay, and if you've done any French, obviously you will list that there as well. Okay. So the personal history. So you'll notice that when you get to the personal history section, all of the previous information that you have entered with regards to your education and your work history will have carried over. Okay. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of the past 10 years is covered. So you have to go through it and make sure there are no gaps in your full personal history. Now, this can include employment, semi-skilled employment, for example. Maybe when you moved to Canada, you worked as a waitress for 2 or 3 months. you enter this here. Okay, we don't need to provide documentation for that employment, but we do need to account for your full personal history. So make sure that is listed there. If you have periods of unemployment, don't stress, okay? It doesn't matter, but you do need to make sure that it is addressed within your personal history so that immigration will see, oh, okay, you know, for 2 months here, the person wasn't working. You know, maybe they just moved to Canada, haven't been able to find a job. That's okay. You're not going to be judged because you have a period of unemployment, okay? If you have any memberships or a member of any professional organizations or associations, do go ahead and list it here as well, okay? Or member of government body as well. Okay, so make sure that is all listed. So your travel history. So all of your travel history in the past 10 years has to be listed. Now, this does not include any travel to your home country or to your current country of residence, i.e. Canada, or your country of citizenship, okay? But it is important that you really go through and make sure you have all the dates listed for your travel history, because you'll have to list the day, month, year of entry into a country and also departure from a country, okay? So we're not just talking months, you have to actually specify the exact date of entry and exit from the country. And you need to list the name of the city that you visited. Now, for those of you that lived in Europe and perhaps traveled a lot throughout Europe, this can be a challenge because, of course, passports were not stamped, okay? Or, you know, when you went in and out of European Union countries, your passport will not have been stamped. So it's not, you know, it's not so easy as just to go back through your passport and determine the date. You're really going to have to sit down and figure out the date when you traveled. You know, let's say you went to London or Paris, or you went for a weekend in Prague, you know, you're going to have to go back and double check all of those dates. If you're not 100% sure of the dates, then you're just going to address this in your cover letter. Okay, so you can just say, listen, you know, I used to go back and forth to London, let's say on business, and I've tried my absolute best to list every single time I went. I may be out 1 or 2 days, and that's fine, okay? But as long as you address it in your cover letter. So some tips for you. Before filling out all of these sections, prepare all of the information so that you have it to hand, okay? So don't just think when you're filling this out, you're just going to dig deep in your memory and try and remember, you know, every single trip that you did. Prepare it beforehand. So you either have an Excel sheet to work off of, or, you know, just list your chronological employment history and address history, so that you have all of that to refer back to, okay? And you can make sure, because obviously everything has to match up, right? So you have to make sure that, you know, if you were living in Dublin, for example, and then moved to Canada, well, you need to make sure that the address, your Dublin address, is going to match up with the time that you were employed in Ireland. And then if you then move to Canada, you're going to have to make sure that your employment and address is all consistent with regards to your dates of travel, okay? I highly, highly recommend you keep a screenshot, okay? Every time you complete one of the sections, screenshot it and just save it in a folder so that you have a copy of it, okay? If you have any information that needs clarifying, just keep a note of it, because then this is all going to be addressed in your cover letter, okay? So for example, if you had any irregularities in your employment, if there was some career progression with the same employer, that type of thing, okay? So just make sure that you take note of it so you can address all of this in your cover letter. So what's going to happen now is once your information is complete, okay, you'll see again here, you get all the green check marks telling you that the information is all complete. There's no gaps in any of your personal history, etc. You can then hit the blue continue button, okay, and then your personalized document checklist will be generated, okay? Obviously, there's information blacked out here to protect a person's identity, but it'll give you an idea of the information that you're going to have to upload. Now, I don't know if you'll notice, but here you'll see there's only one button to upload a file per section, okay? So don't be thinking that you're going to be uploading 5 different documents in each section, okay? Everything has to be merged together. You're going to, and I'm going to go through that with you now. You'll notice too that at the bottom you have an optional document section. Now this is where you would upload your cover letter and any other documents that perhaps you're not able to fit in with the other documents or that you believe are relevant to your application, okay? So preparing your documents, I strongly recommend that if you do not have a scanner, that you invest in one. It is going to make your life a lot easier with regards to scanning all of your documents and making sure that these are then going to be clear and legible. Okay. You know, this is your permanent residency immigration application. Do you want to take a risk by, you know, scanning some documents on your phone? I personally wouldn't, okay? I would really strongly recommend you get a scanner so that you can make sure all of your documents are clear and legible. It's going to make it easier for the officer to review your application, okay? Get familiar with merging and reducing your documents. As I showed you, there is only one button where you have to upload all of your documents. And so what that often means is you have to have all your documents PDF'd, and then you have to merge them all together, okay, so that you just have one document. And you then, if it's quite a large file, you're going to have to reduce it in size. Immigration only accept documents up to 4 megabytes, okay? So you have to make sure that it's going to meet that size requirement. And oftentimes you will need to reduce the size just to meet that requirement. If you don't already have Adobe Pro, I recommend you either get it, or you can even just download their free 30-day trial, okay? And that will allow you to deal with all of your documents and prepare them so that they're the right size, etc., in order to upload them properly, okay? Again, make sure you name each document properly. So for example, you know, normally, as you'll know, when you scan a document, it just generates a random file number. Right away, make sure you retitle it, you know, for example, passport pages, and then your name, and save it like that, okay? And I recommend you save them each you create a folder just for the documents that you are going to upload. In this way, you're going to be able to clearly see all of the documents that you have prepared, and they're clearly titled. This is not only going to make it easier for you to keep track, but also when you go to upload your documents, it's going to make things much easier and more streamlined when you will just go to that folder to upload your documents. So what are the documents that you're going to need? So you're going to need obviously a copy of your valid passport, okay, your permit, identification documents. So this can include birth certificate, marriage certificate, national ID if you have one, proof of relevant employment, your language test, your education credential assessment, and the education credentials to support it. Again, police checks, your medical, proof of funds. It's not required under Canadian Experience class. I'm going to address that with you, okay? And then also your photos. So make sure your photos meet the requirements, okay? These are all listed on Immigration's website. So first thing I'm going to address is the passport, your national ID, and your medical. So include a copy of your, not just your passport ID page, but all the pages with stamps and visas. Okay, so that way the officer is going to be able to see where you've traveled, which other visas you've had, any entries, exits to Canada, that kind of thing. Okay, so again, that's why the scanner is very important. You want to make sure you have a good, clear copy of that. Include copies of any permits that have been issued to you, whether it's a work permit, study permit. If you have a visitor record, perhaps, make sure you include copies of those too. Okay, you can also attach your birth certificate here. Now, it's not listed as a mandatory requirement. I do tend to include them, and I attach them to the passports because that will allow the officer to see that, you know, your birth name on your birth certificate is the same as on your passport. Okay. Some countries, France, for example, have national IDs. So these are actually uploaded in a separate section, okay? And also, once you complete your immigration medical, then you will be issued a copy of the e-medical, which will list your UMI number, and there'll be a barcode on it. Your photo will be on there. This is what you will be uploading in this section, okay? So obviously, you're not going to be able to do that until you've had the medical completed. So your education, you should include a copy of your ECA, your Educational Credential Assessment, and also all of your diplomas and degrees and the transcripts that were submitted along with the ECA. Okay. For your police checks, as already mentioned, you do not need to include an RCMP check. However, immigration can request one in the future. And like I said, you need a check, a police check for every country where you have resided for more than 6 months in the past 10 years. Okay, and it must be issued post-departure from that country. If you are living outside of Canada right now, the police check that you are going to be submitting must be less than 6 months old. Proof of employment, this is critical to your application, okay? Bear in mind you're submitting an application under the Canadian Experience Class, so you want to make sure that the proof of employment in Canada is going to be meeting the requirements. So it's very important that you include a detailed reference letter, which is going to specify your occupation, the location of your employment, hours per week worked, when you started employment, and most importantly, the duties. Okay, so it's really important that you list the duties performed at your occupation so that the officer is going to be able to confirm that the work that you did meets the requirements of the NOC and therefore meets the definition of skilled work and renders you eligible under the Canadian Experience Class. Okay, this letter should be on company letterhead. It should be signed and dated, and it should have contact details of the person who is signing. Okay, the letter really needs to be clear. It needs to be concise. Okay, you need to make sure there's no ambiguity within the letter, especially if you're in an occupation where, you know, perhaps some occupations are a little harder to define than others. So the onus is now on you to make sure that you are clear with regards to the job that you're doing and the duties performed. Okay, I do suggest you include a copy also of your employment contract, copies of your pay slips, because clearly that's showing that yes, you know, you were working for an employer in Canada, because here's proof of your pay, your T4. So you should have, obviously, by now you should have your T4 for 2020. And then for 2019, if you're working here then include that T4. And also you should then have your notice of assessment for 2019. Okay, it's a bit early right now to have the notice of assessment for 2020, but perhaps you do if you filed your taxes early. So do make sure all of that is included and all merged together. Okay, now there is a section for each of your various periods of employment, so per employer, so upload those per section per employer. Okay. So proof of funds, you'll notice that there's a section that asks for proof of funds, but applicants actually in the Canadian Experience Class are not required to prove funds. However, let's remember this is an automated system, so there is a button there to upload the documents for proof of funds. It's always there, okay? So it doesn't matter if you're under skilled worker, where it is required. Under Canadian Experience Class, it's not, but something needs to be uploaded, because guess what? If you don't upload anything, you're not going to be able to submit the full application, okay? So what I suggest, I generally say, listen, just include a copy of your bank statement or a letter from your bank confirming the funds, okay? It's not something that you're going to be, that's going to impact your application per se, but you can go ahead and include that. If you prefer not to, you can write a simple letter and just say, proof of funds is not a requirement under the Canadian Experience Class, and upload that. Cover letter, I strongly suggest including a detailed submission or cover letter with your application. Okay, so this is basically your way of bringing together all of your information, confirming your eligibility to the immigration officer, and also clarifying any irregularities or any gray areas within your application. So as mentioned, if you can't quite remember all of your travel within Europe, but you've listed them to the best of your ability, address it here. If your occupation, changed whilst employed at the same employer because you moved up the ladder, that's fine. Just address it here, okay? Because sometimes you may have one reference letter from one employer, which actually covers 2 positions. So you can, just address that here and explain why. I also suggest attach your language test results to the cover letter, and also any other documents that you can't fit anywhere else. So, sometimes try as you might, you just cannot reduce the size of your documents to the requirement for that section. So times like that, I just say, you know what, I'm just going to attach it to the cover letter. I explain in the cover letter that, I just couldn't quite fit all of this in that one section. So please see it attached below. And the other thing that I always do, I list every single document that is being uploaded for this application. So this way, again, it works, for you as the applicant, you can cross-reference all of the documents listed with what you're submitting, but also the officer then can also go through the list of documents if needed, so they can see everything that was indeed uploaded. double check. Go back to your information, double check it, okay? Just make sure that you haven't made any typos. Go back, double check everything, make sure everything matches up. Review all of your documents to ensure that they have all merged properly and are clear, okay? Make sure they're less than 4 megabytes. And again, make sure they're clearly titled and saved in a separate folder so they're easy to upload and keep track, okay? So that way you've got everything. You can just always access that one folder when you're uploading, and then you can start uploading all of your documents. So you'll see what happens is you click on that blue box saying upload file, then you will be given, the box will pop up so you can browse your folders, go straight to your folder where you've saved all of your perfectly titled documents in a separate folder, and then you will be able then to upload them all individually. Okay, and again, at the bottom where it says optional documents, that's where you'll be uploading your cover letter. You then go ahead and need to pay your fees. Now you will be paying, it's an $825 fee per adult. Okay, if you have any children, it's a $225 application fee. The right of residency fee is $500 per adult. There's no fee per child. Now, you don't technically need to pay the right of residency fee right now. I do recommend that you do. Okay, just go ahead, get it paid, and it's just going to streamline your application process, okay? Because it means that immigration will not then have to come back and ask you to pay it. If you've not done your biometrics, which at this point is highly unlikely because most people that are here in Canada on work permits, etc., have already done their biometrics. And right now with COVID, you don't, if you've done it for your temporary, you do not need to do them again. That may change. But if you have not done your biometrics previously, then you'll need to pay the $85 biometric fee. Okay, so once you go ahead, you will go ahead and pay your fees. And the actual, as soon as you put in your credit card information, you submit your credit card information, that is then the confirmation that your application has been submitted. Okay, so it is the final step, is the payment of the fees. What happens then is that you will receive an acknowledgement of receipt or an AOR and your payment receipt. This will be sent to your profile or portal, okay? So you'll get a message and then you will open up the PDF. You'll get the acknowledgement of receipt confirming your application has been filed. And you may get requests, okay? So check your email regularly. Also check your junk mail, your spam folder. For example, immigration may ask, for their right of residency fee to be paid. And if they do, they only sometimes give you 7 days to pay it. So make sure you do double check. There are times when an officer may need some clarification and they may ask you to fill in a separate form, for example. So just make sure you check your email. Now, technically, express entry applications are 80% of them are supposed to be processed in 6 months or less. To be honest, with COVID, it's not really happening right now for the majority of applications. So it may very well be more than 6 months. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that right now, for those that are in Canada, immigration are actually literally just issuing a letter now, just saying congratulations. As of today, you are a permanent resident of Canada. And that letter is used to prove permanent residency. Okay. But within that letter are also the instructions to send in your photos for your PR card to be issued, which is your proof of status. Make sure you do that right away. Okay, there's been delays on that side of things as well. Okay, now I'm just going to mention very quickly with regards to a bridging open work permit. If you're in a situation whereby your work permit is going to be ending or expiring whilst your permanent residence is in process, it's okay. You can go ahead and submit an application for a bridging open work permit. Now, in order to do that, you must have received your AOR and your current work permit must still be valid and it must have less than 4 months left on it. Okay, and obviously you need to still be in Canada. With that, you can go ahead and apply for a bridging open work permit, and that'll then allow you to continue working in Canada until your permanent residency comes through. A few reminders for you. Make sure you do fill out the information properly, completely. If immigration are asking for something, provide it, okay? There's a reason they're asking for it. And you have to remember that The officer that is reviewing your application, they're going to base their decision, or they're going to render their decision based on the information and the documents that you provide. So the onus is on you, the applicant, to make sure that you submit all the correct information. I'm going to just make a little note here. Make sure you pay your taxes. Okay, I mean, that's a given. Obviously, in Canada, you need to pay your taxes. But not only that, this will allow you to further prove to immigration that you have been rightfully employed in Canada, because you're going to be able to show them your T4 that the employer issues to you, and also your notice of assessment, which is issued to you from Canada Revenue Agency. Once again, I'm going to remind you, make sure your letter of employment is detailed and it provides a clear list of the duties performed, okay? And just make sure there's no ambiguity in the letter. And obviously be truthful. That goes without saying, okay? This is an immigration application. You are signing it electronically, which has the same weight as you signing it in ink, okay? So you are confirming that the information that you are submitting is accurate and truthful. Do not do the following. Do not give any false information. Do not purposely leave out important details. If you do, your application, not only could it be refused, you could be found inadmissible, and you could even be barred for 5 years for applying for permanent residency. Okay. Well, what about COVID? So, you know, what if you can't get certain documents, or you can't get an appointment with a designated panel physician because there's a 4-month wait? Well, if you've applied, this is direct from immigration, okay, they say specifically, if you have already applied for a document, but it's delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, you can send proof that you're trying to get it, okay, like a receipt, copy of an application form, copy of a waybill, include a letter. So again, in your cover letter, mention why you're unable to get the document and when you'll get it, okay? Send the document as soon as you have it to avoid more delays. Now, I just need to explain that this doesn't mean that you can just be like, I'm submitting my application, but I'll send in my police check later, okay? Because I applied for one from, or I'm going to apply for it. I don't have it yet, but I'm going to submit my application. That won't work, okay? You have to show proof that you have applied. So let's say you've applied for a police check from Spain. You have to show that you have submitted the application form, that you've sent it off, and that you are just waiting for it to be returned to you. Okay, so it's not enough to just say you have to show proof that the document has been applied for. So again, if you are missing documents such as police certificates, it's important to note that immigration will not close or refuse any applications in progress. Okay, they will automatically give you an extra 90 days to send in documents from the deadline in the request letter. And this applies even if the letter says you only have 30 or 90 days. So they'll keep extending the deadline for another 90 days until you can get the documents. Obviously, as soon as you're able to get them, send in the missing documents. Okay, you can send them in by web form. So for example, and they give the example of, you know, maybe you can't do a medical exam, or you can't get a police certificate due to COVID delays. That's okay. You don't need to worry about that too much. Okay, so just make sure though that you do get it submitted as soon as possible. And also, keep an eye on immigration's website, because things do change, okay? I can't imagine they would change this prior to May 15th when everybody's applications are due. But definitely keep an eye on immigration's website, also on our own social media as well, because we will always be putting updates there. Okay, so what's next? What we're going to do now, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and email us at info@canadianvisaspecialist.com. Okay, if you have any questions, if perhaps you want a consultation with me, even if you want me to take care of your file, I'm happy to do so. Okay, bear in mind, you don't need to have a representative. It's always your own personal decision. There's no requirement. Make sure you go ahead and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel rather, please go ahead, like us, subscribe to our channel, and you're going to see we're going to be posting numerous videos in the upcoming little while. Okay, so just good luck, everybody. I hope everything goes well with your applications. You know, we're looking forward to having you all joining us here in Canada. Okay, thanks, everyone. Take care.